Good morning. Thank you for joining us. This is Whale's Creator Toolbox. And for those of you turning in, Whale is the leading omniversal membership club for the digitally native, empowering creators and collectors through innovative programs, unparalleled access to digital assets like our vault, and a vibrant community driving the future of Web3 art and culture. And today, we're very happy to have the Transient Labs team with us, or a few of them, I should say. And that is Ben Strauss, co-founder, and also Daniel Volkov, the head of, I believe, marketing. And so I would say, this is a series that we've been curating here at Whale. You're the second platform that we have the opportunity to highlight. And we're trying to spotlight, these platforms, developers, builders who are, trying to build innovative and groundbreaking tools for artists, creators of any sort. I think artists is generally the target audience, but I think we also acknowledge there's creators of all types, right, that can leverage these tools. So, yeah, I think I had the opportunity to probably meet both of you guys at the Bong and Olufsen event a couple years back in NFT NYC. It was very crowded. I don't expect you to remember me, but I also perhaps at the Unheard event at the World Trade Center. That highlighted some really fantastic young creators as well. So it's just great to see you guys are tied into this kind of constructive part of the creative building aspect of Web3, and that's certainly a huge part of the Whale community, and it's great to have you here. So I've heard some things also, Ben, that you're a photographer. Some of our Whale community members have highlighted that to me, and Daniel, maybe you're an artist, but maybe you guys could just start off and give me just a quick overview of who you are and what brought you to Transient Labs.
Yeah, do you want me to start? I can start.
Go for it.
So, yeah, my name's Ben Strauss. I'm one of the co-founders of Transient alongside Marco Papis. And let's see, I mean, I have quite a rich background, I suppose. I started in music performance, actually, and went through a master's degree in jazz performance, specifically playing the saxophone and piano. So I spent a good 6 years doing that, and then transitioned over to mechanical engineering undergrad for 5 years, and then completed a master's degree in material science and aerospace engineering. So I spent a lot of time in college.
Wow.
And then I worked as an aerospace engineer, a design engineer, with JPL, NASA, Blue Origin, SpaceX, through a company called Honeybee Robotics. So we built robotic mechanisms for spacecraft. Did that for 3 years. Marco, my co-founder, also worked with me there. We've been like best friends since college, like mechanical engineering, and always been doing photography throughout that entire timeline that I just laid out. Specifically landscape photography. I've been doing that for a decade and a half. I've built quite a big repertoire of work. I've had my work published all over the place, including National Geographic. And that's really what brought me into NFTs was, I had been interested in investing in cryptocurrency in 2020 with my own personal paycheck. And then NFTs kind of started really rebooming again, or for me and everyone in that last wave, it was the first time we were discovering NFTs. And so I was well into photography, selling lots of prints. And someone's like, did you know you can make like cryptocurrency by selling your digital files? And that just like really intrigued me, because digital licensing traditionally is kind of a pain in the ass. So I was like, this is really fascinating. Don't have to deal with physical prints, but I could still get my work out there and sell it and make, Ethereum, which is something I was really interested in investing in. And so I started selling work, kind of really helping to pioneer, I suppose, photography as like an accepted art form in NFTs. Like I remember early 2021, it was very, we got a lot of collectors saying photography wasn't real art. I remember that, like the few of us that were trying to kind of really prove its worth in its place in NFTs. And slowly but surely, we found collectors that were willing to put up good amounts of money to collect photography, and started making, realized smart contracts could make dynamic artwork. You could use contracts for more than just a vehicle to get stuff on chain. So Marco and I started writing custom contracts, dynamic code for photography that changes based on time of day, for example. And people were watching what we were doing, asking us how we were doing it. So we started kind of working with people on a one-on-one basis. And the demand got really high really quick. We had Time magazine reaching out to us, really well-known artists, musicians, authors, like Neil Strauss. And before we knew it, we were just had this huge lineup of like clients, kind of unintended at first. And that's where Transient was really kind of originally born, was helping people kind of create custom experiences back in 2021. So I'll stop there. So talked for a long time there. Daniel, take it away.
Awesome. Yeah, my intro won't be as long or thorough, but I got into the space in 2021, right after the Beeple sale. I think a lot of people learned about NFTs, through that or through NBA Top Shot. So that's kind of my onboarding was Top Shot. And then moved more into, there was a period of time where there was like these indie PFP projects, I'd call them. So it's like artists that were creating their own PFP projects. So I think Ghosts is a really good example. But from then I just traded a lot of PFPs and art. Made my way up to a CryptoPunk within a few months, actually. So the good old days of 2021 is pretty quick. And then, I got burnt out a little of trading, spending 12, 15 hours a day on your phone. It can be exhausting. I'm sure a lot of meme coin traders know what that's like nowadays, right? So it's very similar to how NFTs were back during the boom. And then I actually I had a passion for photography NFTs. That was my first kind of entry into collecting art, as NFTs, collecting art in general, as collecting photography NFTs. And so from then on, I kind of knew that I really liked the space. I liked what people were doing in it. And I was lucky enough to meet the Transient Labs co-founders early on when they were first starting out, maybe like 6-9 months in. And I joined the team as an intern for about a year. So I was helping with marketing and operations things, and then joined full time as soon as I graduated college. So it's been a journey.
Wow, that's awesome. This is interesting because I actually have a background in music and studying trumpet and composition. Used to work a lot with authors in the audiobook world, doing digital licensing, so I get that aspect. And did my round of trading and then stopped because it was just too much stress. It wasn't worth it. So this is awesome. That's great to kind of learn a little bit more about you guys. And then I've got I guess a number of questions here that we could talk about for Transient Labs, but maybe you can just give me a real high level overview of what is Transient Labs, what is the target audience here?
For just like at a high level, target audience we have kind of multiple pillars, but I suppose 2 core pillars would be just creators of all type. We bounce back and forth between using the word artist or creators, and I really think, to me, artists and creators kind of are the same thing. So creators of all types, and then just collectors and people who are interested in exploring and collecting artwork and content from these creators. I would say in terms of like, not really the caliber, but the types of creators that we really go after are those who are trying to build a more serious career in art. So there's lots of types of content, right? You have content that you might consume on like a social media platform. It's going to be a lot different than the content that we're primarily helping to foster. And so a lot of that would be serious artworks, serious drops. We have auction mechanics coming up that'll be dropped into the product soon. And so really helping like anywhere from emerging artists all the way to very professional creators that have been doing this for decades continue or build their career in a Web3 capacity, and then reach an audience who's interested in discovering and collecting that work.
And I'm curious about that. Are you finding these are artists who are already natively digital, and that's really the bulk of what they do, or are you? I mean, obviously, you mentioned a lot of different artists in the lead up to Transient Labs forming. Do you still have that kind of group of artists who maybe this is the first time they've ever done anything digitally?
Yeah, we have a few artists that we help onboard into Web3 who have never really sold or explored the world of NFTs. And then from a digital perspective, I mean, there's a lot of just painters who start and purely just work in a physical medium, who are scanning their prints in to digitize them so that you can actually sell them, you know, in like a digital collectibles or digital artwork capacity. So not everyone's like digitally native. I mean, the first thing off the top of my head is a painter like Jeremy Booth. You know, he does tons of physical paintings. A lot of his exhibitions are all physical paintings. And there's quite a few artists that work primarily in the physical realm, but they're starting to slowly experiment with like the digital realm as well. Thank You X is another one that comes to mind. He does those big abstract paintings on canvas.
Yeah.
So this one's funny. The food delivery #1 that popped up. So it randomizes every time you load the page. It'll pull in a new set of mints to feature. This is our good friend Benny Redbeard and investor in Transient, who's
Okay.
decided he likes to do this thing where he poses for food delivery services. And he's starting a series, and he's just like wanted help setting it up. So I just thought it was funny. He's a big collector and a fund manager in this space for art, and quite the influencer. So he just looks like he's having fun.
I mean, that's awesome. I mean, that's a great example too of, right? You know, not everyone who creates things and utilizes the blockchain is an artist. And we all have our different objectives here and things that we're involved in. So that's really pretty cool. I think that if you've got people who are that excited to be using our tools and just doing stuff with it, I mean, that kind of seems like what we want, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Then yeah, Dan, if you want to chime in too. Oh, sorry, I didn't know if Danny wanted to add something because he works closely with all of our artists.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's been quiet in terms of like Web2 creators being onboarded. I think there's been some platforms that did that well, like The Hug, who was recently acquired, right? And a lot of those artists we've had the pleasure of collaborating with and kind of getting them more ingrained into the Web3 ecosystem. Because like the product that you're looking through right now, we support 4 different blockchains, right? We support Ethereum, Shape, Arbitrum, and Base.
Okay.
So just those communities have their own kind of mini audiences, and people get onboarded to Base and they want to do, you know, a really cool edition mint. Transient's the place to go. We have, you know, 5 different edition mint mechanics that creators can choose from. But largely, I think our targeted audience are people who have created before, and are either moving into the digital realm and NFTs, or just digital creators who have been in the space since, you know, 2020, 2018, and are looking to do unique things.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that'll also be you'll find new people coming in as this cycle kind of gets underway. But I guess, do you feel like there is one way to sum up what Transient Labs has done up to this point? And, you know, are there anything specific that you feel are new and innovative to the space that Transient Labs has contributed?
Yeah, to sum up what we've done up until now is kind of demonstrate that the blockchain can be a creative medium, not just a vehicle for, you know, like a utilitarian use case. It can actually be very much a part of the paintbrush, I suppose, is the way to put it. So that can be done through the innovative contract mechanics that we've like introduced, whether that's ERC 7160, Doppelganger, Shatter contract. The thing that and a lot of these are kind of one-offs too. So the contract we released with DK Motion's Deeples project, which is pretty fascinating one. It's a 721 contract that can escrow 1155 tokens. And that's how those little avatars are like actually owning the clothes they have. So if you sell your avatar, the clothes or the 1155 items kind of go along with it. So yeah, I think we just really demonstrated and like to push boundaries on with the tech that's available to us to create really deep experiences that you wouldn't otherwise get with your off-the-shelf contract types and in tooling. And so what we're trying to do is productize innovation. That's like one thing that's kind of at the core of Transient Labs. How do you take these one-off white glove service things and productize it such that anyone can use it? So if you were to jump into the lab today, you would see 7160 contracts, which is a multi-metadata contract standard that's built on 721. And so I could screen share if you wanted to show you some like live examples. You're going through
that'd be great.
What seems to be great support page. So that's something that I'm noting as you're scrolling through this. So some of those NFTs I think that's linking out to don't exist anymore. But a lot of collectors like TJO using 7160 to store multiple creations inside a single token. And it all operates on the 721 standard. So it's supported across the space in every platform. But
if you want to go ahead and share your screen, I'd love to just have you take us through some of that. Because that's one thing, I've now popped into several spaces and calls you guys have done. And that's something that I am just really amazed by consistently is there's just a wide breadth of tools that are relevant, but it does seem like you were saying, like there's that extra nuance to things. There's that depth, the layers that you're building in to be able to expand the capabilities and just kind of give that complete toolbox, right? Sure. It's not just a hammer, a chisel, and a screwdriver. You got much more than that.
Yeah. Happy to walk through some of this. Can you see my screen? Am I good?
Yes.
So I'm going to start with something a little easier to wrap your head around. So OXDGB, very well-known artist in this space, creates some really beautiful like vector art. So he came up with this cool idea and this experiment that he's doing that 7160 was a perfect fit for. So to explain 7160 briefly, and let me see if I can find the graphic that I'm thinking of. Let me connect a wallet here. Doesn't really matter which one, I don't believe. Oh, it does matter which one. I'm on one that I've never created an account with. So hold on. There we go. So multi-creations, you kind of have it, think of it as like a 721 token because it is built on the 721 standard. So it's a one-of-one token. You can have multiple one-of-one tokens in a collection. It's like a one-of-one of X. Each token is unique metadata. So 7160 is just like that, except you can do these metadata updates to the token like you normally could with a 721, but you don't ever lose any pre-existing metadata states that token's been through. So you're actually just adding new metadata to the same token. And so the token, instead of being a single file, is more like you're minting a folder of artwork that you can continuously add to for the lifetime of that NFT. And that single NFT has a full history and access to all of the metadata updates that it's been through. So it's a really interesting concept. So we call them multi-creation tokens because they can hold multiple creations. So OXDGB deployed this through the lab, which I have that pulled up here too. If you just sign up to the lab, you'll be presented with what do you want to create. And there's all these types of tokens. You have your 721s, your 1155s, here's your 7160s, and you can do mint pages. Trace is a on-chain decentralized certificate of authenticity protocol we have. And then you can create collections, dynamic art, and a few other things here. So he selected multi-creation tokens because he has this cool concept where he works with an artificial intelligence model that he's trained on his work to create these artworks. And you can see here, this, it looks like AI. It kind of looks like OXDGB as well, but you can see that the edges are smooth and there's some typical AI artifacts. And so what he does is he takes this artwork and then he completely reworks it in his style. And so he wanted to store both versions of the artwork in the token. So this is token ID 3, for example, in this collection. And so you have both the AI version of the token, and then you have the artist or the OXDGB rendition of what AI spit out. And the collector of this, who has right now pinned OXDGB's version of the artwork, he can switch back and forth between these two as much as he wants, and it actually updates the metadata of the token. And so you never lose access to what the original version of the token was. Did I explain that well? I think I did. But.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think that.
So we can see those with all these. So
that's incredibly interesting. Yeah.
This one's like the artist, or this is the AI rendition. You can see the spelling is classic AI.
Classic AI.
Bleeding into each other. There's all those artifacts. And then he took that AI's vision and then turned it into OXDGB vector art. And so every single one of these tokens has that. It has the AI original and then his version. And so that's like a simple example. He could keep adding more if he wanted. So another example is TJO, who did these.
Right. I think we're all very familiar with TJO and his blue.
Yeah. Yep. And his, I don't know how you pronounce. I think it's just Rouge. I'm gonna probably butcher it, but Rouge. I think there you go. Butchered it.
That's actually a great story inscription example that we can show.
Oh yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we'll bookmark that when we get over there.
Sure.
So this one is Diaries of Compulsive Obsessions. It's he wanted to basically tell a story where each page is a chapter. And so every token in here is a 1 of 1, but it's all on a 7160 collection. So you can see up here, we have these badges that'll tell you what type of contract this collection's on. And so it's up to the collector on what page they want to pin their token to. So every single one of these tokens has access to the same 39 artworks. Or I can't remember exactly how many pages he has. It might be like 16. I know there's 39 tokens in the collection. So if I click on any one of these, and you can see some of them are all the same, where the collectors have pinned the same artwork. Some of them, the collectors have pinned their favorite. So if I were to just click on this one, for example, you can see here every single page. So yeah, it's 17 pages. So it starts at 0 all the way through 16. You can see this one token contains 17 unique artworks. And we know that from the symbol here, this pinned symbol, let me zoom in there. That pin symbol here, that shows that the collector has pinned this artwork. So if you go to OpenSea or Super Rare or anywhere else that renders or pulls in 721s, this is the artwork that'll show.
Oh,
but
incredible.
I, as the collector of this token, can connect my wallet and I can be like, you know what, today I'm going to change it. And so I'm going to actually click this guy, which is page 6. And I'm going to pin this creation. If I actually own this button would be enabled and I'd be able to pin this token. Sorry, my Wi-Fi really struggles when I'm trying to stream and load high.
That means both the artwork, the title, the description, all the traits get updated on.
Yeah, it's a full metadata reskin. So you not only is the artwork can be different, but the title can be different. Like Daniel said, the attributes can be different. It's basically like a whole new token, but they're all stored in the same token. So you as a owner own 16 or 17 unique artworks in one single token. So that hasn't really ever been done before we started messing around with multi-creation token types. So that's just like a really simple example of one of the innovations, and people have come up with all kinds of crazy use cases. Some people do.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what do you think is kind of the the wildest or most innovative?
Let's see here. I mean, this one's really cool. To tell the whole story. I know TJO is a huge champion of 7160. He thinks that, and he has said this multiple times, is that he never sees a reason to use 721 again. Even if you only want to add one creation, 7160 with just one creation in it literally is just a 721. So it gives you this future-proof token that if you ever needed to update the metadata or a link broke or anything like that, you could easily push a new piece of metadata onto that token. But you still, as the collector, you're not losing old metadata and you're not losing provenance. Like when you do erase and replace metadata updates, like you would do on a standard 721 contract, the collector kind of just loses what that token used to be. Even if that previous state was defunct or broken, you lose access. But this keeps a full history of anything that it's ever been updated to. So it's kind of like we just think that if you own the token, you should truly own that token. You shouldn't lose access to metadata. You should have full capabilities to see where that token's been in terms of a metadata provenance, and be able to switch it back if you wanted to. So I know he's like a 7160 maxi. He said that he probably will never use 721s again, and I'm kind of in the same boat. Even if I never plan to add another creation to a token, I just want to do a one of one. 7160, it's literally a 721 at that state until you start adding more creations. But then you can do cool airdrops for your collectors without increasing your supply. You can add a specific new creation to their already existing token. So it's a really cool way to reward collectors as well. So there's like tons of different things you can do with this. People have done aspect ratio use cases where you create a one of one, and then you also upload a 16:9 version of that one of one and a 9:16 version of that one of one. So now you have multiple aspect ratios to choose from as the collector, depending on what your digital frame setup looks like. So
there was a question just popped into our Discord. The question is really, yes, you can change this, you can add to it, but is there a capability for a collector to sell that third image out of it, or what is? I guess maybe the question is, the artist has a lot of the ability to change what's happening here and present it here. What does the collector have the capability to do?
Yeah, the collector owns all the creations in here, so their capability is to pin the metadata to whatever creation they want, and that will ricochet, or ricochet is not the right word, that will propagate through the entire ecosystem on chain to what everyone else will see as the metadata. So like I'm trying to think if I do have one. Go ahead, Daniel.
They can't sell a creation. We call it, like what you're seeing, all those 16, those are called artwork creations that are within a 7160 token. And so the collector has the ability to pin different creations, but they can't sell it. It's not like a liquidity mechanism or anything like that, but it was a good question for sure.
Yeah, so they essentially have control over some presentation of the metadata, but they can't actually go in and change anything. They can't add to the token, remove from the token, or anything like that.
They cannot yet. No. I mean, we've played around with ideas of being able to add to. So like as a creator, I could auction a one of one, and Daniel's the collector, let's say, or a series of one of ones. Like I could do a whole one of one of X collection that I sell out of one of 50, all on 7160, just standard 721 state, just one artwork in each one. But later on, I could host like an upgrade where you could come by and either for super cheap or free, or maybe I could charge like a more, a higher price. Collectors could actually go opt in or purchase or claim new artworks for their token. So there would be some collector engagement there, but right now the creator is the one who's adding artworks to the token that collectors own. And because it's like a single token, and these updates are part of its history and its provenance, you can't like peel out a creation and sell it independently, because then you'd have to mint a brand new token to be the host of that artwork.
And I know we've got a lot of things here to discuss, but the next question that popped in my head was, could I, as a creator, have this folder of artworks or the story that TJO is telling us, right? And if that's ever sold, certain parts of it don't transfer along, or certain parts get added in.
If it sells, all of them go with it. Like that token you get the new collector is going to get the entire catalog of work inside that token. And then they have now the power to choose what pins and what isn't pinned. So for example, this creation here, the dynamic version of it, this is the one that I have pinned right now. It's the first, or what we call the origin creation, the first piece in this token. So if I go to OpenSea, it pulls in just fine. It recognizes that as a 721. I can't see the other creations in here because they haven't built a UI for it. They could, like it's all on chain. Maker's Place, before, they had to unfortunately shut their doors. They did build a UI for 7160, so you could see all the other creations. So any marketplace can tap into it. It's just a contract function. So you can see here, this is the dynamic version. If I here, since I own this, let's just say I want to change it to the color version. It's not dynamic anymore. It's just static and it's just colored. So I can pin this creation because I own it. And so I'll sign a transaction here because it is an on-chain transaction. You're actually, you're doing.
And this, I imagine this is a gasless signature.
It actually costs gas, but negligible amounts. It's like it's very small, especially if you're on an L2. So you can see here the metadata just updated. Our marketplace caught it. If I go over to OpenSea, hit refresh metadata, and then refresh the page, you can now see Bloomscape color. It pulled it in.
Great.
So this is now the main pinned metadata, and you can see that our pinned icon now shows that this collector has pinned creation number 3 here. So that's kind of how that innovation works. I know we spent a lot of time on 7160, but that
it's a fascinating thing, and I think we've heard a little bit about 6551s, right? And I think that DK Motion's release was very well covered, right? Anything they do is very well covered, and I think 6551s they've also been very appealing to a lot of people in our community who are big into gaming, and they have that idea already of like, I'm strapping on my backpack and I want to put stuff into it, and that's part of my character or whatever. So
sure. We actually made a new version. It's slightly different than 6551 for DK's project, but it had similar mechanics, but where the avatar owned its own 1155s. But the difference is that you could, if you did sell the avatar, all the 1155s would go with it, but you could also collect multiple 1155s that you own that the avatar doesn't own, so they could be in an equipped or an unequipped state. So you could sell the avatar but still keep your wardrobe over here where you have a bunch of other clothes and items, or you could unequipped items from your avatar and those go back into your wallet, like in your control. And so it was kind of like the 6551 didn't quite meet the needs. So what we do in those cases is we'll just build a new kind of setup, custom contract infrastructure that does. So it's really fascinating. And that storyline is going to continue. We're doing DK part 2 coming up here. So it'll be fun to see how that continues to evolve. Maybe it does turn into a standard that we put into the lab. That's kind of
Have you seen this? Have you seen this relationship changing as a result? In this relationship between the creator and the collector, do you see that this kind of new dynamic interplay is changing that relationship for the better, for the worse, or at all?
I mean, I can jump in with my thoughts here. I think it definitely, depending on how a creator is utilizing it, it can definitely be used to strengthen the relationship with collectors. And so like 7160 is one part of that. I think story inscriptions, which is a feature on all our contracts, is another really powerful example of strengthening or deepening your relationship with the collector and the artwork itself. And then maybe if you can type in like winner programmed, there's a really cool example of that. But
Stories.
Yeah, winner program.
Do you mind if I try to give a brief overview of what stories are first?
Please.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
So the story inscriptions apply to all contract types, all like creator sovereign contracts at Transient Labs. So if you do a 1-of-1, an edition, 7160, story inscriptions is enableable on all types of contracts. But the idea behind inscriptions originated from a project we did. Can you remind me the name of the project, Daniel? Oh my gosh, I'm like blanking. With Michelle.
Hidden Stories.
Hidden Stories. Where essentially it's like you have these, everyone, not everyone, I'm not gonna say everyone, but most people know what an NFT is, like 721 or 1155. And from on-chain, we have a certain level of provenance, but that provenance is usually ownership provenance and sales history provenance. So you can see who's previously owned it, and you can see what those piece has previously sold for or been purchased for. So that kind of stuff is, pretty widely adapted or adopted by platforms, and you can go into block explorers like Etherscan. You can see all that stuff. But a huge thing that's missing, and this is kind of what we did with the Hidden Stories project, was you don't have like this human level of provenance behind artwork. Like an artwork goes through a lot more than just who's owned it and how much it sold for. There's, like where has it been displayed? Where is it traveled? What emotions has it evoked in its collectors? What is the artwork? Are there deeper stories behind the artwork that aren't told, on the surface? It's like, how do you capture all that provenance, like the historical richness of an artwork or an NFT on chain? So we created this mechanism called story inscriptions, and they're on-chain inscriptions that a collector or a creator of a given token on a transient contract can write to. And so it actually stores that stuff on chain tied to that token and that contract address immutably forever. So it's a pretty cool mechanic. And what did you say to type in, Daniel? I was going to type in Rouge, but
you can start with Rouge. I mean, there's a few examples. Let's do Rouge, and then let's do the estate, and then let's do winner program.
Okay. So once again, TGO, very big innovator. This is kind of like this is a follow-up from his blue. So this is Rouge. He used inscriptions. So like you see this NFT, you can see that it was minted by him. You can see that it's still owned by him. If you ever sold it, you could see that it's been sold. But he wanted to like use story inscriptions to put an entire usage license on chain tied to this artwork. So if we go down to on the token page, story inscriptions, and I drop that down, we can see here that he's added story added by TJO. So this is a creator story. He added an entire on-chain agreement or a license on how this piece can be used. It's like a license. What would you call that? It's like a legal license.
Yeah.
So this whole thing he put onto chain, and then down here he added an amendment to that license. So something later where he wanted to update it, so he amended it with a new clause, and so that's also on here. And these, you can add insane amounts of text and data on here, and the cost is extremely cheap. So this is actually all stored on chain to this contract, tied to this token ID. So that's, and we just render it on the front end. We pull these in. Once again, kind of like 7160, this is a simple contract read function on any transient contract. You can type in token ID, and you can fetch the story that's added to that contract. So any platform or anybody, any just freelance dev could whip up a site to render the stories for any token. And that's what we're doing here.
Right.
So that was a really cool use case, is adding a license on chain to this token that you otherwise wouldn't have like provenance to. And then what was the other one that you were saying?
I've been the alley.
Oh yeah, the alley. So once again, OXDGB. Story inscription that he added here was a proof of exhibition. So he actually exhibited this at the Ninfa Milan, and he took a photo of it hanging on the wall and uploaded that image and a description to the story inscription for this token. So there's like now a richness to this piece. You get information that you might not have gotten before, where you can see that it was exhibited and the date and all that stuff.
I mean, that's super interesting already, like a proof of exhibition to just kind of further that provenance, to also give it weight outside of just our screen, whether it's a phone or your laptop, whatever it is. So much of this work and so many of the artists and creators that we see are doing stuff, or they're transporting what we see digitally into the physical world, or vice versa. And that context is very important.
Yeah, it's crazy that we haven't really captured it until this. And so if we go to story inscriptions, we can see a whole list of on-chain records, and like our homepage is going through a whole update for V2, which will make this.
Yeah, I've noticed. Yeah,
it's going to get a lot more. What would you say? A lot more minimalistic, but very user-friendly and easy to navigate. Some pretty cool discovery mechanisms and stuff. But we can see here all these inscriptions that people have added, and there's tons more. This is just a live feed of the most recent. And not only can creators add stories, but like I said, collectors can add stories. And I'm trying to think of a good example.
Let's do winner programmed. That's a great winner.
Oh, winner programmed.
This is an edition of 30 by Bastian JPEG. And so the concept is really cool, right? He released this edition of 30, and then the concept was collectors would go. So he started here with a creator story. You can see that's denoted by the purple badge. But then if you keep scrolling, you'll see all these gray badges, which denotes collector inscriptions. And so he incentivized collectors to reflect on the artwork and inscribe, a nostalgic experience at the arcade, right? So his whole point of doing this was, if you're a collector who inscribes, you now have provenance that's tied to a piece, an experience from your childhood that's related to the actual artwork. And then he used those stories to extract like Easter eggs and update the metadata of the actual artwork to kind of give credit and show love to the collectors who were part of the story in a way, right? So it's just a really cool way to involve, I think holds the record for most collector inscriptions right now, with like over 20 collectors coming in and providing a story of what they think about, like what the piece reminds them of, right? And so that was really powerful in terms of, again, strengthening the relationship with a collector. And then once, if a collector sells this edition, the stories all remain. Like you can see what the previous owners said about the piece and how it made them feel, which can be really powerful.
So I'm curious then. Sorry.
I was going to say 1155 is the way the stories work here, is because it's a shared token, right? Everyone owns token ID 1, for example. So if you add a collector inscription to an 1155, yours gets added to everyone's version of the token. So you guys are in like a shared forum almost on chain.
Got it.
Your token. So that's why we see all the collectors' stories here under one token. Whereas a one of one, it's story gets added to just that token ID. Go ahead.
So I guess then I'm curious. It was an interesting comparison to a forum. Does that get moderated in any way? And is this something that is an automatic feature, or is it something that the creator has to turn on, and can they, toggle it?
Yeah. So the first question is no. This is completely non-censored. It is and this is why it kind of segues into your second point. If I go to make a contract here, I'm going to do it on base or something. Story contract, whatever. It doesn't matter what contract I choose. There's stories on everything. Oops, I think I just freaked my browser out. There we go. And then I go to advanced down here. I can actually turn off story inscriptions if I just don't want to deal with it. But yeah, it enables this default on, but I can disable it if I just don't want to risk trolls or whatever. I don't know. people just coming in, or I just don't want people adding provenance in that way. And if you want to change your mind later, let's see here, I'm just going to find something. I can go to a contract in contract settings, and I can always turn off story inscriptions at a later point. So any point in time, if people start to get out of hand, you can disable it. Or if that's something you want to turn on later and you initially had it disabled, you can turn it on.
I saw that field about ASCII included in the contract.
Yeah.
Is that does that, and this is just me thinking, does that import these inscriptions into the contract?
ASCII art is just like adding your own personal touch.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a field there.
Just another extra
yeah, just another.
Yeah.
Manifold started it. People seem to like it. So so yeah, the story inscription, this like thing right here, the fact that you can enable and disable has also created some really cool use cases where I and Daniel and I are going to collaborate on an artwork. But we have to mint it on a single wallet, right? You can't co-own a contract. I wish you could. That's just not how the blockchain EVM works. There's no way to. You can have an admin on a contract, but as far as like a contract owner, there can only be one. So Daniel and I might whip up a new wallet called Daniel and Ben Make Art. And then we make an art piece. What's cool about this feature is he can be an admin, so I can add him in as an admin, or he can add me as an admin. Someone has to own the contract, of course, but we can be added as an admin. Admins can add creator stories, so we can enable the stories up front. Both add our stories to say like, yes, I'm signing off in an on-chain way through like, through a provenance story mechanism that Daniel and I are both signing off that we are collaborators on this artwork, and then we can disable this. So those stories will be frozen there and no one else can add stories. So people have done like collaborations like that where you have the two artists signing off on chain that they are indeed collaborating on a piece, which is a cool way to kind of work around the fact that you can't have two owners.
Is it possible to use a smart contract, like a safe multi-sig as the owner?
Yeah, you can do that. You can definitely.
I'm not sure if that helps at all, but that might make it even more complicated. But
that address would still show up as like the owner on most platforms. Like when it says created by, it'll just show whoever the contract deployer is. Like you can't share contract deployer between two addresses or ownership. You could fake it on the front end, which is something we've thought about. Like, oh, maybe there's a collaboration setting you can turn on, and instead of just add admins, maybe there's another section over here that's add collaborator, and then our front end shows it as being created by Ben and Daniel. But if you go to OpenSea, they're just going to default to whoever deployed the contract. So a single address.
Okay.
But this is a cool way to, like, at least on chain, we can both sign off.
Yeah. Yeah. And so these inscriptions, are they available on any of the token contracts that you offer?
Yeah.
And that's something that just toggles like here. Once you actually have created the token through the lab, then you can toggle it this way.
It's an on-chain signature, so I have to hit save, which will prop up. I got to sign it. So all these are on-chain actions. Otherwise it's not like permanent.
Yeah.
So what you can see by like a simple example like this is that really what we're doing is we're giving these innovations and these tools, but then the creators are really the ones who are like piecing it together to create these unique experiences, including things like this. Like someone came up with the idea of like, oh, wow, you could toggle this on and then off. And I can add an admin. So I could technically have a collaborator sign with me that we're both in on this artwork, and then turn off the stories so that no one else can add stories. Just want to keep it clean. Or like the 7160 using multiple aspect ratios, or putting a story like a book together in a single token, or adding a license on chain through story inscriptions, or doing competitions through 1155 community style forums that are on chain tied to that token, that travel with that token wherever it goes. Yeah. So we just give all these tools and these innovations, and we try to do it in the simplest, most UX friendly way possible, because we know that our ecosystem is got a lot going on. And then that gives creators freedom to just piece these. I kind of like to think of it like Lego blocks and stuff. They get to just piece things together in their own unique way and create an experience, like a deeper experience for collectors.
So how are you gathering all of this feedback and the kind of new ideas that creators are looking for? Do you generally have an open forum to these type of things where people reach out to you?
Yeah, we have like an alpha chat where a lot of our kind of power users are in. We also just watch our own ecosystem like a hawk. Like Daniel's always on top of it. And
I mean,
we just see these things pop up, or someone will tweet that they did something unique, and we're like, that was really interesting. And then Daniel will whip up like a use case article about it. Sometimes doing a Twitter space, and at a minimum doing like a thread on X and like a Medium post to just like highlight what that artist did. And then other artists see that, and then they're like, oh man, if I do something really cool and unique, they'll get a feature from us. And it kind of just like creates this network effect where people are exploring ways to use our tools and to piece things together. And we're always going to be adding more and more stuff, more and more Lego blocks, I suppose is the way to put it.
And do you do bespoke? Do you work with other artists and we just never see Transient Labs on the page, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we have TLX, and this is our TLX legacy page. So all the artists we've worked with. This is we have Transient Labs, Transient.xyz product, self-service, productized pillar. And then we have TLX, which is our bespoke white glove, like do crazy shit over here, like DK Motions, Deeples, and Shikai's Postinos, and Drip Drop from Dave Krugman, or Doppelganger from Patrick Amadon. Like these are where we do our really kind of boundary pushing ideas. And a lot of the ideas and tech that come from this eventually work their way in some form into product. So it's kind of like an incubator in a sense. And what was I going to say? Oh man, I had something to say about all that. But anyways, this is our TLX legacy page. TLX stands for Transient Labs X, the artist, because we'd always write it like that. We'd always put like TLX Dave Krugman. And that would be like the name of our chat we'd have ongoing throughout the project. So we just started calling it TLX, which is a fun name. So this page is transient.xyz/TLX, and you can explore all of the past projects we've done, both featured projects that we've curated and put up front. If you click on any one of these, you can read about what that project was. You can explore.
I recognize quite a bit of these.
Yeah, and we did this because people didn't. We like to take a back seat, and we want the artist in the spotlight. We never slap our brand or badge on top of people's custom projects. So we did this because a lot of people just didn't realize their favorite projects were built by Transient. And so we're like, man, we need to like make a landing page. People just exploring this are like, oh damn, like I remember Beef Brothcos. I had no idea Transient was behind all that. And 24 hours of art, Deeples, Doppelganger, Drip Drop. Every 30 days, the Glitch Gallery series that's very popular. That's fully built, powered by us, and then run by Glitch. And then the list goes on and on. Perils of Sese, Super Rare Pass, if you remember that. So yeah, these are just the curated projects. And then down here we have every single TLX collaboration we've ever done, and this list is insanely long. So, and it's growing. It's growing by
that's
the
incredible.
week.
No, I got to peruse that because I knew obviously you guys were involved with certain ones, and now this gives me a whole other thing to fall down the rabbit hole with. But I did want to be conscious of the time here. I know we're up at the hour here. I've got extra time to talk if you guys do as well. I know there's some questions probably from the community. Is that cool by you?
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
We didn't even tap into like the really crazy stuff we have coming. Like a lot of people have heard of the dynamic art engine. But what people have seen is the legacy version. So we actually retired this one. This is the block builder. but it
Because dynamic art is really, I think this is something that's highly discussed in our Discord and the whale community. Even today, earlier today, I know one of the guys in the chat right now, Vic. He's a photographer. He was talking about dynamic art as something he thought was kind of the future of what is going to really be the hook, for the next round of artists. So I'd love to hear more about this. Yeah.
Yeah, so we set off building this block builder. It comes from Marco and I's engineering background, where anyone who's in the audience right now that's an engineer or has been to school for any type of like systems engineering or vibrations or civil engineering probably knows what Simulink is. It's this program to create like closed loop or open loop feedback systems for robotics. Have you ever seen those robots that like balance a pendulum, inverted pendulum on their head?
Sure.
And if you push it, it'll like adjust itself to keep the ball like balanced, like a broomstick. Any of those like balancing robots, any robotics in general, like the robots that build cars and those robot arms you can buy for freaking cheap now. It's actually very impressive. You can get a desktop biaxial gimbal robot that can just like, you can program it to do all kinds of stuff. Anyways, those robots run on closed loop systems. And they're very complicated to program. So Simulink is a visual programmer where you're literally just dragging blocks around and connecting them with like arrows and stuff. And so we were inspired by that. How do you take dynamic art and generative art? Let's just call that, for the sake of this call, dynamic content in general, is technical, like it at the core. You need to understand how to code. You need to understand computer logic. It's usually always based in P5.js or JavaScript and then rendered or wrapped as an HTML file, and that's minted. So there's a technical barrier to it. And we're like, how do you lower that? And so we started with this visual programmer that we built off of a library called Blockly that Google made way back in the day as like a hackathon project. And we discovered that, kind of dusted it off and completely built it and customized it into our own. So each one of these blocks, and I'm just going to try to find an example here. Each one of these blocks is a subset of code. So you can see up here, let me remove some comments just to make it easier to read. We have the preload function. You can see preload. And then we have these image load events like image 1, image 2. If I were to delete this block, that code line now is gone from here. Or if I put it back, so it's back. These blocks and every single thing in here is a piece of code. And so you're just piecing things together and you're kind of building code through a block interface, which I think was super fun. Marco and I really loved it. But the problem is it still requires that you understand. You don't have to know syntax. You don't have to know how to code, but you have to understand like computer logic. So you still have to understand like what's an if statement. So if this, this is called a comparator here. If image equals image 1, do this, else do this. Like you have to still think kind of like a computer. And so that creates still a little bit of a learning curve. And that didn't stop artists from getting in here and trying to build stuff. We had recipes here that are pre-built. So if I did like the mouse mapped, and I think I deleted these images off IPFS, so it won't load. There we go, not this one. All right, perfect. So you can see here, this dynamic piece creates an image that is mapped to my mouse. So I can fade between a winter version and a summer version. This is actually my landscape photography, and these are real photographs. But
okay,
it's like the theme throughout all these recipes. You can see,
and sorry, am I catching a little bit of a gradient change as well? It's not okay. Oh yeah, you're doing it slowly, so now I can see clearly. It's not just like a straight wiping of the screen. It's just
no. If I go super slow, I think it's lag. It's very smooth if you were to experience it. So, I mean, these scripts are running 60 times a second, so it's picking up any change in the mouse. So this is this is a dynamic art piece that I could then export for minting and take that HTML, mint it anywhere as a normal token. So these are pre-built recipes. You can see there's like a little subset of blocks here. If I were to drag something out, it's going to break the piece. Oh, that's not the right one. If I were to drag, I don't know, like this out, it's no longer going to work because that's a key piece of code. So it was hard to not break. There's no feedback. you kind of have to understand how to make this stuff. But we did have recipes, as we call them, that are pre-built to let artists just swap in their images.
Okay.
This works great pre-AI era. But what I was seeing from user behavior well into this being developed we did a bunch of hours of calls of this, doing like webinars and stuff, is a lot of artists would reach out and be like, okay, so I'm using your like fade, crossfade, but I'm trying to add a third image so it fades between 3 images. I got stuck. I went to GPT. I asked it what to do. I came back here and I used your custom block called raw code, and I just pasted in, whatever the code that GPT gave me, and it's still not working. And so I saw a lot of people using GPT and trying to force it into this like block editor. And I was like, okay, I'm very much like a pro AI as a tool kind of person. So I use it all the time. And so we made the call at Transient, and I brought it up. It's like, crazy idea. We just built this really awesome interface with all these toolboxes and everything where you can like build stuff. What if we like completely delete this repo and start over from scratch? And that's what we did. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
because we're moving into a different era. So if I go to, and this is completely unreleased, by the way, and it is not up to design. So this is undesigned. This is a raw, just dev only testing environment that you guys shouldn't be looking at, but here we are.
Alpha.
So we have, I've been sharing some videos on Twitter. So this is the same layout that we get here. We have, except instead of a workspace like this, we now have a coding block where I can actually write code. It's not just a read only, and it has a full text rich or coding rich interface that you would use on. It's the same library that VS Code and any of those main code editors run on. So I can write code in here if I'm comfortable writing code. It has all the nice bells and whistles that a typical code editor has. So it's like a step up from P5.js editor, which a lot of people are used to using. But also we now have this chat interface where I can upload images. I can have a media bucket, and I can talk to an artificial intelligence who's trained specifically on creative coding. So I can take, right now we don't have image upload built in. It's literally in the pipeline, like being worked on right now. But I could just say like image 1, paste that in here. Image 2, let me just paste these links in here since I already have them. There we go. And then I can say, all right, create a dynamic piece that fades between these 2 images based on mouse position. So and obviously we're working on loading states, we're working on feedback and all kinds of stuff. So now you can see here, this piece is not obviously working. It's fading out to white. So I could see the code that it spit out. If you know what you're doing, you could edit this, or I could also just iterate with it and say, I don't see the second image. Just fading to white. I've done this demo a lot, and this is the first time that AI's hallucinated and given me a broken version, but that's kind of what AI does. There we go.
Hey,
so now
that's good to know that you're not just that perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. But all it took me is saying, hey, I don't see the image, just fading to white. So it's a really cool, like, you're still working with AI to build something, and it's still up to you to understand why it didn't work, or to kind of guide. The issue was the tint being applied in the first image. Like, it identified its own issue, and you just kind of like reminded it, like, hey, this is broken, just like you would talk to an LLM. So is
this a model that you've trained?
Yeah, and we have a huge rule book that it's following. So you'll notice things that I didn't tell it to do are like all these image modes, rec modes, ellipse modes, the way that it loads in images, the way that it draws the image so that it's centered in the canvas using this min stuff. All these things are built-in conditional rules. Like, if the user is asking for this, do this, use the code like this. It's like all this opinionated stuff to eliminate errors, and is kind of really geared towards creative coding.
Cool.
So this part, fun, It's crazy. It's all that, but it's not like novel. I could go to GPT and I could probably say the same thing and it would give me a similar output. Maybe not centered and properly sized, but similar. What's really the value add here is that DAE is not only just a Photoshop for creative content and creative coding, but it is an entire ecosystem. So you saw when I went back here that I had my cookbook. I had all these recipes that I can save. Not only can I see my pre-existing recipes and scripts, I can go to the homepage and I can explore published recipes from creators of all kinds that have used this and have perfected scripts. Some may be really like professional coders that didn't even use the AI and they just came in here and published some really awesome dynamic or generative art scripts that I can explore. Or other artists who have created a really cool fade piece that maybe they used AI, maybe they didn't. Doesn't really matter. This is just a tool in here. And then I can publish this. And then other users can go see my recipe and they can fork it into their own, edit it, swap out images. They can publish that. There'll be share buttons down here where you can share full page experiences on Twitter and stuff like that. And there'll be a whole minting flow in here. So you can say export for minting, take you straight to the lab, choose your contract, start minting tokens right from here. It'll also be like export as a PNG, export as a GIF if you wanted to take like a screen recording of your piece, you interacting with it, all for like shareability purposes.
That's great.
So that we're building this whole network effect and this ecosystem around dynamic content and dynamic art. And this, the LLM will always improve. We're really adaptable, so we can unplug and plug into a new LLM like DeepSeek if that proves to be better. So that's really adaptable. We can always be moving around. And creates just for a really awesome environment. So like, I don't know, I don't like the white background. So I could just say remove background. And I spelt it wrong, but it doesn't matter because LLMs should be smart enough to know what I'm saying. And so remove the background. You can see it's transparent now.
Oh, wow. All right.
And I can say, okay, quick. Add a cool snowing effect with, I don't know, particles. And we'll see here, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But
what capability? Oh, yeah, that's not the snow I want to be. Okay. Yeah. No, I see it now. All right.
And I can say
what about the collector though? I mean, this is obviously giving an incredible tool to the creator, and that is obviously that I think the focus here. But is there something else here for the collector to be able to have a dynamic experience as well?
Yeah, I mean, in this case, the collector's experience would be that it's interactive.
Yeah.
So, if you want to create a piece that is interactive, then it's up to the collector to interact with it, I suppose. Or if it's like an autonomous piece that changes based on weather, price of ETH, time of day, lunar cycles, then obviously they're going to get to experience that dynamicism when they mint that token and they own it. But collectors could also come in here and start playing around. So people who aren't creators could become creators with something like this. Just like, I kind of like to think of this as a mid-journey for dynamic art, dynamic content. So you can see here, I now told it like, hey, let's remove the snow and just keep it in the boundaries of the image. So now I'm not getting all these crazy snow lines outside the image.
Yeah.
It's very fast at doing this. And then I can always see what it did to the code. Something we're working on is more feedback. Like it'll highlight the changes it made and you can accept it or reject the changes just like you would get in Cursor AI, but doing it inside of an environment that's specifically built for dynamic content.
That's great.
I'm sure I could say like only have the snow start when I'm faded over to the winter version of the image.
Yeah.
And it would add that.
I mean,
or change to a different weather scenario, right? Sorry, Daniel, go ahead.
No, you're good. I just wanted to know like if there's any questions from your community, like we'd love to answer them and talk about it. But also like in the lab, we have a support channel, plenty of support guides. We're very accessible on Twitter. More than happy to, walk people through our platform or just ideate with users and creators.
Yeah, I imagine there's going to be a lot more questions that come out of it. I've been trying to kind of throw them in as we go along, and I do want to make sure we touch some things, even briefly, like trace. That was perhaps one of the first things that really kind of hooked me into looking deeper into Transient Labs and what you guys were doing. I know that there's another question already just about 7160s and whether or not it can be a one of one. And I think you kind of mentioned that 7160 with just one work is kind of inherently just a 721. But does it make sense otherwise for a 7160 to be a one-on-one, or is there a different tool here in your toolbox that a creator should be looking at?
I mean, you could just use 721s like these, but like you said, if I click on any one of these that's just got one addition in it, or sorry, one creation like this is, from a contract perspective, this literally is a 721. So 7160, it is built on the 721, and it's almost like the 7160 part's dormant until you add a second creation. So this is for all purposes is a 721. If you pull this in on, you could auction it on any platform. They would just recognize it as a 721. But it gives you the freedom later to be like, cool, I want to add another color version of this to just like stay in contact with my collectors in a really unique way without airdropping new tokens all the time. I could say, hey, I added a really special version of your artwork to your token. So now you have two states your token can take. So
and this could still be additioned, right? So I could have 10 of these soul twins.
That's what TJO did. Yeah, he had 39 of all the same. But the cool thing is collectors can pin their own version, so it's like they're still kind of like one of ones in their own way.
Just right. Point out for 7160, like they're typically supposed to be used for one of ones, because if you're using them for an addition, you have to go into each token one at a time and add, all 5 items to each token.
That makes sense.
A batch for now, Daniel. For now, I've been bugging Marco about batch updates, so that's something that's on our roadmap.
Oh, all right. So I mean, this just seems like to kind of sum it up here, you guys are constantly looking for extra feedback. You guys are iterating and coming up with it internally. I see, one of the things, there's a couple points that really made me think you guys are the ones to feature on the series. The fact that you're empowering creators with these innovative tools. Whale is very committed to supporting and elevating digital artists in the NFT space, and it's not even that onboarding is an important part, but being able to provide the tools, point them to the tools. Education is a big part of our community as well, and we're lucky to have people who just know more and can point people towards that way. And I think this also enhances engagement, right? You guys are coming up with ways to facilitate the creation, but then sharing it and interacting with it. Same sort of thing with us, right? We want that vibrant community aspect. And then I also see you guys are kind of at this forefront, right? You're developing these dynamic NFTs really that are evolving, responding to inputs, really pushing the boundaries of what art could be, either from the creator's standpoint or even the collector's standpoint. I think quite often is what we find here in the Web3 space. And that's something we try to be as well. We want to be kind of pioneering and innovating as well. So I am curious, where you guys see yourself heading in the future. Do you find yourself working more with individual artists? Are you looking for larger communities? Are there even artist collectives maybe that you've tapped into, so that you're kind of working with a collective voice instead of just an individual?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, we've definitely worked with collectives. We've done things similar to this where we kind of give a rundown to a specific collective on our ecosystem and how it can be used. We've done drops with like the ITAN World Collective, where they've curated, a group of artists, and then we've kind of led them through our product on how they can set everything up and provided some marketing support for that. So, I mean, definitely, we're not just focused on individual artists, but communities of creators. So we're always open to ideas and conversations, brainstorming sessions. And again, I think for us, we basically have these 3 pillars, right? We have the lab, which is targeted for creators. That's where you deploy your smart contracts, mint your NFTs, set up mint pages. We have auctions coming next month. You have TLX, which is a little more exclusive. We do those on occasion with artists, and those are pretty custom drops, custom websites, custom mint experiences. And then another pillar would be the dynamic art engine that we're currently working very hard on, which is what Ben just demoed, a very raw version of it. So definitely focusing on product this year and just making those improvements based on creator and collector feedback.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I'm looking, anybody in the Discord, obviously, drop any other questions that you have. There were a few others that I did not get to yet. Obviously, you guys seem to be operating on EVM chains. Otherwise, do you consider yourself fairly agnostic to this? Are you exploring non-EVM chains? What is your outlook there?
Yeah, we've looked at Solana, and I think we're it's such a different ecosystem. So first of all, a lot of the innovations we built aren't possible on Solana just because of the way that the contract infrastructure is set up. It's very much like a shared contract, a little bit more centralized. But that doesn't mean we couldn't do like the simple, straight off, off the shelf Solana support. We just haven't seen the demand for it yet. But when we're very responsive to artists. If you ask anybody we've ever worked with, we have like no doubt that that's the response they'll give. So we're very receptive, and we listen to what
any ordinals.
We haven't done those either. No, I think it's just been focusing on EVM because it's a lot to tackle by itself, just to get that
absolutely
out. But the thing is, a lot of our tools, like DAE, is completely chain agnostic. It's actually Web3 agnostic entirely. So we've got plans to be like reaching out to deviant art in these places that aren't even on chain or in Web3 whatsoever. Because dynamic art engine, like my ultimate goal is get people like Meta and Twitter or X and TikTok and those types of platforms to support HTML content. Imagine like scrolling through Instagram, and instead of just seeing an MP4, a GIF, or a video, an image, you can also see HTML, just like you would see scrolling on OpenSea or SuperRare, our platform, where you get every little frame is just an iframe that's either displaying an image, video, GIF, but also could display HTML. So you could see live pieces depending on what time of day you happen to scroll on it. Maybe it looks different, or it's interactive and you could stop on it and kind of like interact with the artwork or swipe around to see like a before and after and stuff like that. You could so much possibility. It's quite insane. And this goes far beyond art. I'm talking like fashion. You could rotate models around in 3D. You could show before and afters by scrolling your finger back and forth, like all kinds of stuff that content creators would probably go nuts for if you could engage with it on platforms like Instagram and TikTok and Twitter. So that's where I want to see it go. And Dynamic Art Engine would be the Photoshop of dynamic content that would power all of that content creation, or would be a major part of it at least, because most content creators aren't going to be technical. So having a place you could go, save recipes, explore other people's recipes, like a before and after, or time of day piece or whatever, and then use that for my own content without having to know any code whatsoever, is a very powerful thing. So that's where I want to see it go. And like I said, that's completely chain agnostic. So people can use DAE to build whatever they want, and they could go take it to the Solana or Tezos ecosystem and they can mint stuff. And it's also a generative art tooling too. Anything that's in JavaScript or P5.js. So
a few other questions I want to get to. We talked about all these different tools and the kind of freedom that you're just giving to artists, and it seems like it doesn't matter for their technical background, anything here. How are you paying for all this?
Yeah.
Is there a fee system involved?
Yeah, right now everything's free. So we pay for it by burning through our runway.
Yeah.
And I think we're just trying to get it all built and tested and get feedback. We don't want to charge for something unless it's worth paying for, which we're getting, we have things that are definitely getting there. We make protocol fees on mints, but that, that's that's very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's very dependent on the art market health, and it requires high volume because it's set, right? It's a set fee that the buyer pays anytime they mint something. And I know others use this model like Zora and Manifold, and we have like a very small auction fee. It's only 2.5%. So that's not like where bulk of it would come from. DAE, we're going to have to rate limit just so we don't rack up charges. But the whole idea is that we probably start implementing some kind of tiered system where there's freemium stuff. There's always got to be free basic contracts off the shelf, 721s, 1155s. But beyond that, in unlocking certain features, and especially using DAE, you start to implement some kind of like subscription model. Or I don't like to go the token route. That's really like,
I mean, that was my next question. Is there any sort of plan to release a token, or integrate some other token into the platform?
Yeah, definitely the latter. The integrating an existing token that's earned its place in this space. That's something we're looking at very seriously. But never create our own token. Well, I won't say never, but we have no plans to create our own token. Too many platforms do it, and I rarely see it work out in the long term.
It's a difficult thing.
We don't like the credit system. It's annoying as hell. Like with AI stuff, you run out of credits, you have to re-up. So I think having some kind of like on-chain and off-chain way to subscribe on a recurring basis. Subscription burnout is a thing, but people are probably more burnt out in paying for things in other ways. I'm happy to pay for my GPT subscription. Like it's a tool I use all the time.
So I think we've covered a lot of these big things. AI, you guys obviously are incorporating that very heavily into what you're doing here, which is really cool to see. The token, I think that comes up quite often. And I think one of the other really hot topics right now is SocialFi. Is there anything that Transient Labs is doing to plug into SocialFi or leverage that for the creator, and what would that be?
Yeah, not in the way that Rodeo's doing or Zora's kind of played with, but more of a kind of interconnected network functionality or mechanics where you can talk with people during live auctions or mints. I do like the idea of being able to comment on artworks. It just adds a cool provenance, even if it's not on chain. And then kind of like what we're really focused on, and I don't know if this falls into SocialFi, or SoFi, is discovery. That's one thing that's lacking pretty hard.
It's huge. That's huge.
So that's one of our major focuses for 2025. And we have a ton of really cool and exciting concepts that we plan to build or experiment around that is completely related to discovery of art. How do you connect collectors to art? How do you connect artists to collectors? How do you really bridge that gap in a way that's novel and unique? Obvious answer is we have to leverage agentic behavior in some way or another. And so whether that means we have all the kinds of ideas, like artists going through some kind of interview process that's AI driven based on your answers. You can talk to this agent that develops almost like an artist portfolio for you. And then collectors would do something similar, kind of like eHarmony for art in a sense, but some really interesting ways to help this agentic network understand what you're looking for, the art that exists, and the artists and who they're trying to reach, and connect these collectors to artists. That's a big one. Just smart categorization, whether it's AI powered or algorithmically powered, and some really cool incentives that I don't want to share because it's too cool of an idea.
No, you've been very generous. You've given us, I think, some real very interesting things to look at, and I'm sure the conversation will continue on in the whale community. But I definitely want people to keep going back to you guys and continue to be on this journey that I know I've started with you guys and several other people as well. And I know we didn't get to everything today, but the trace system I do think was incredibly interesting to see you guys roll out. That is something that we're constantly talking about too. This link between physical and digital items. How can the NFTs be used for that provenance and leverage in a way that makes sense? I think the biggest question that always comes is, when something sells digitally or physically, what happens to that mechanism? That's something that people are always talking about, but maybe you guys have an answer to that.
Yeah, it goes with the art. Like the actual trace chip owns the artwork, and it's like a cryptographically secured wallet stored on it. I was trying to find.
Daniel's got one. Yeah. Okay. Daniel's got one.
I have more than Daniel. I have. I have like box of these chips under my desk that I send out to. We have a storefront, by the way, where you can order your own chips and everything, but these are just like spares and stuff.
And so when you're saying to go with the work, is that embedded within the frame or
yeah, it's up to the collector.
What are you meaning there?
Or sorry, it's up to the artist how they want to integrate it. We've had people put it in the base of a sculpture. They all have adhesive backs with 3M tape. So, people have stuck it to the back of their prints. People have included it as just like a card. Like I have some certificate of authenticities for some artwork and some collectibles. Got my wife a signed Taylor Swift LP behind me over here on the wall.
Yeah.
There. So that has like a certificate of authenticity with it. But that just comes in like an envelope, and then I just store that in a safe or something. So people do it like sometimes like that. But the card itself can be permanently attached, somewhat like temporarily attached. It could be an envelope that's just with the piece, but it's just a COA that is owned by the chip itself. So the chip, think of it like a ledger. It is a wallet. It has a seed phrase that no human on earth will ever know. So when you send things to it, it just locks it up forever. So that's where the trace lives. When you mint a trace on the lab, you have your card with you. It just tells you, it walks you through it. It's like, okay, put your placeholder artwork. What does that look like? Write your title, description, time to mint. It says scan the card with your phone. So you scan the card with your phone. It syncs with your desktop and or whatever. Syncs if you're doing it on your phone too. You can mint it from the lab on your phone. Syncs with the lab and then mints it, drops it straight to that trace chip. And so now you just scan the chip and it brings you to the NFT page. And you as the creator can add records to that trace chip. So it's like a living COA that it can constantly be dynamically updated from anywhere in the world. As a creator, you don't have to have physical provenance to the chip to add new records to it. So then the collector goes and auctions that piece, that trace chip, or the COA, just like it would in a traditional sense, goes along with the physical. And then the creator or the auction house can add that record to the chip that it's been sold. So there's all kinds of cool shit you can do with it too.
Yeah.
It's like a COA that it uses story inscriptions, actually. It's the same mechanism. So you could add behind the scenes, you could add photos, proof of exhibitions, you can do all kinds of cool stuff on the trace chip. But yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah, it's not an NFT meant to be sold. It's a locked away NFT meant to just be a COA for that physical item.
Okay. So it really should travel with the physical item.
Yeah, just like a COA would.
Yep.
So,
and maybe just the last thing, you guys had an auction kickoff today, I think.
Yeah, yesterday we had 11 auctions kick off.
Yes.
Yeah. The to be revealed.
To be revealed.
But yeah, it's a really cool project. It falls under TLX, our most recent. If I get my phone out here, so I use my phone to videotape stuff. I've got all the stacks. These are from the 1990s. These were sealed boxes, floppy disks. And I think these packages are from 1994. So the idea behind this was to give a tangible understanding of what data feels like, because a lot of people have lost touch because it's all on the computer. And this concept of like this conversation of putting data on chain always comes up. And it's like, well, that's very intensive. Data is expensive. Data is not just an invisible magical force that lives on your computer. Like it's an actual tangible thing. And so we had this idea that a floppy disk is about as much space that you can put on a single block on the EVM blockchain. So like, what if we auctioned all these pieces? They were blind auctioned. So if you go to the auction page, which Daniel might be able to drop in the private chat, but if you went to the auction page, you'd see 11 auctions set up, all with placeholder artwork. So the bidders didn't actually know what the art looked like. They know the artist and they know the file type. So beyond that, that's all they know. They are all going to get shipped a box of floppy disks. They have to take all the floppy disks, use a floppy disk reader just like this that everyone's going to get, load it onto their computer one chunk at a time, concatenate it all together, and then reveal the artwork. So it's a very cool physical, tangible experience to like hold your artwork in multiple pieces and then sit there with the nostalgic sounds from the 90s through this reader as it reads the floppy disk and loads the pieces onto your computer. So it's pretty fun. It's pretty cool.
I'm just on the page real quick. What has been the response to it? Have you found people really love this idea, of seeing a floppy disk, and that the artist is here, so you presumably can research the artist and decide if it's an artist whose work you're generally interested in, and then these colors, as I understand it, kind of represent the general palette of the work, and you find out if it's what type of file it is, et cetera, et cetera. How have people responded to this as a general mechanic for a blind auction?
Yeah, it's been actually a really good response. The people seemed very excited. It's a very new way to kind of experience collecting artwork. And I mean, the discs themselves are kind of part of the provenance. So some of the collectors have talked about framing their discs into a shadow box, for example, and having that as part of the provenance itself, because the discs will have those actual labels on them. So they'll be like kind of brought into the real realm. They'll look like that.
And so when will these be revealed? When do we actually know what these artworks are?
Yeah, it's up to the collector if they ever want to reveal it, actually. So
really? Okay. All right.
I'm in the process of, I've done most of these. We've got 3 artists left. It takes a long time. So this is Modest, for example. And his artwork was one of the bigger ones. So it takes up 12 discs. All 12 discs in here are needed for that single artwork. So they're all on here. The labels are being shipped to me from our designer, but they all say Modest 1 of 12 all the way through 12. And there's a README on the first disc that instructs you how to concatenate it back together to reveal the artwork. And then there's instructions on how to reveal the secret phrase that's in the artwork data, to then take that to the contract and reveal it on chain for everybody to see. But you don't have to. You could keep it revealed.
Okay.
Or concealed. So yeah, it's I'm excited for it, but it takes a long time to put these together. Each disk takes like 2 minutes to write 1 megabyte to it, because it's super, it's like super old school, and it sounds like my childhood.
No, I mean it's but this is something that you just hit. It's nostalgic. It's also sensible in some ways. I mean, I think maybe some archivists might disagree, but at the same time, it's really not a bad state for your data to exist in. And it is very interesting that one floppy disk is about what it would be. I think you said the limit on chain of the amount of data.
Yeah, it's not exact, but it gives you an idea of how much data you could shove into a single block. So it's at least gives you the tangible sense of what that means. And that's kind of what we're just like, how do you get people to understand that data is not invisible and it's not free? And so that's when we wanted to do something like this. And it was, especially in this art market, I mean, some of these pieces went for over an ETH. we want to do it again, and we're probably going to explore other mediums like 8 tracks or
Wow.
tape cassettes or vinyl records.
Laser
what are other
discs.
really cool ways we could store
Yeah.
data?
I still have a micro disc player.
What's that?
I still have a mini disc player. Sorry, not micro disc. But
Yeah.
and some fresh mini discs if you're needing some stock.
Yeah, I mean, there's all maybe we'll hit you up if we get to that point. You remember Green Day did an album where they released every track on a different format?
Yeah.
Recently,
Yeah.
Did you see that? It was pretty
yeah.
cool.
No, I mean this is there's probably no end to the creativity you guys can come up with, or that artists can push along. And I think that's the last question that we've got in the Discord. I'm just take a quick scan. But I've shared the website Transient.xyz, the X profile, also for you guys too. Hopefully people follow along because you guys are also always posting interesting stuff. How does somebody, if an artist is watching right now, a creator of some sort, how do they get into that kind of dialogue with you guys? What's the best possible way to tap into a channel and reach you guys?
I'll say DMs. DMs are always great. We're very responsive in the DMs, and if needed, we'll move it to email. Yeah, we like to connect with artists and talk with them. So a lot of times someone will reach out on X and we'll set up like an introductory call where we can actually just meet and talk and see kind of what the artist is up to and what they want to do together.
Cool.
Yeah, our whole ecosystem's kind of built like a funnel. So we really want to cater to all artists of all success levels and have opportunities to kind of move up through the system. And it's going to get more and more. We're adding a pretty powerful curatorial thing at the bottom of the funnel or the top of the funnel, however you want to think about it. But TLX is also part of that. So any user can come in, build a crazy or a normal experience. It's up to them how they want to use the tooling. But then kind of, tell their story, work through success, start making more sales, getting a bigger collector base. And then that's when we can start doing like TLX light projects with artists, and then eventually moving up into like the full-blown TLX, which we only do with like 4 to 8 artists a year. And then have our other kind of highly curated outlet that we're working on right now. So it kind of gives you a chance to really develop as an artist, I suppose, and work your way through and find success.
There's artists in the chat who are already talking about they're going to reach out to you, or people who are looking to explore the tools already. So I think this has been a really good intro to the Transient Labs toolbox, and I really want to thank you guys for coming on and sharing with us. It's been really, I've learned a lot, and I already thought I did a deep dive, but there's clearly a lot more coming too. So
yeah, definitely, and super excited to keep on going. This year will be crazy, one way or another. So it'll be
Ben. There's been a request to maybe even have you pop into our creator channel and field some questions directly from some of our creators. So maybe we'll keep that in mind. Tony Sellen says hello.
All right, hello. Yes, Tony.
Yeah, we'll jump in. Thanks for having us again. Thanks for inviting us, and to the whole community for joining and watching us rant and go down the rabbit hole of Transient. So
I'm gonna go back into 90s nostalgia and break some more seals on these boxes. Look at this. Look at the labels on them. They say new and enhanced performance. Wow. And they all have the hotlines on them too. So I can call these Discat hotlines, I'm sure, do not work anymore.
Do they have a smell to them?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I wish you guys could smell it. It just reminds me of my childhood. And everything. The sounds when you're loading the discs on are classic floppy disk, old school electronics sounds. It's pretty fun.
It's awesome. Well, thanks again, guys, for joining us on Creator Toolbox and talking to the whale community. And anybody listening, of course, you can find us on X at Whale Members. Same with YouTube. Twitch, and anywhere else that we have social media out there, including the decentralized social media world. And join our Discord, discord.gg/whale. So this has been a fantastic episode. Have a great rest of your days, guys, and everybody listening. Good morning, good night, wherever you are.
Thank you.